I want you to think about people as computers for a moment, and being able to upgrade the mind, the operating system of humans. Now, I say this is the old new tech because I'll come to that later, but this is very mechanical, and I've just talked about the quantum reality of wave-particle duality, and I'm talking about a system mechanical now, but let's just go through this for a bridging, and then we'll move to the new quantum technologies it applies to this. So if you think about hardware and software, if you've come across NLP before, meaning neuro-linguistic programming as opposed to natural language processing, we have this ability to affect the neurology of the body, which the neurology bathes every cell in the body. It's 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 11, the amount of neurons we have in the body, which is more stars than the sky, entire sky. It's fascinating, the quantity. And so what happens is that these light up and turn off depending on what's being processed through the 5 senses. We use language to build images within our body, to build sounds, feelings, taste, our self-talk, and that's all what programs our remembrance of our past and our projection of the future and how we feel about ourselves and what's going on. You know? And very often it's the insidious nature of what's said internally that we don't hear in organisations that actually is what destroys the engagement in organisations and prevents organisations from moving forward. And if there's no trust, people aren't going to say, well, actually, I've got this self-talk of I'm not good enough, or you're never going to do it, or I don't think you're good enough, or those sorts of things. And then programming is the idea that we can actually change the syntax, the words, the way that we use our language to create a different reality for us. We can actually take the way in which we use words. So the famous example is Johnny bit the dog, or the dog bit Johnny. Same words, totally different experience for Johnny. So that's the way that we encode it internally, and how we say things. So for example, you know, I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling courageous. Like even that's a subtle body shift in that. Or you know, I get that I could feel nervous sometimes, or I am feeling nervous, or I'm always nervous. They're very subtle shifts in the way that we use the language, but they move it from a state of permanence of that's just the way they are, they're just a nervous individual, to being they're a spirit having a human being experience that just happens to exhibit a little bit of nervous behaviour now and then. Now, this is the model that NLP shows, which you have an external event, it comes through, it goes through your attitudes, your values, your beliefs, your meta-programs, decisions, memories, languages, and where you happen to be, time, space, and energy at the time. And all of those delete and distort what's going on. You've probably all had the experience where loved ones ask you, can you fetch the salt? You go into the cupboard, open the cupboard, I can't see the salt. Where's the salt? The salt's not there, I can't find the salt. I can't find the salt. Here, that's where the salt is. Because your reticular activator system has deleted it from your sight because you said you couldn't see it, even though it was there in front of you. And we have that all along. And so what's happening is, because we're unconscious a lot of the time, we're deleting a lot of the new ways of doing things and ideas and creativity and innovation that should be available to us all. Then what happens is it creates an internal representation, which is an image or a vision of what's going on, a movie inside. That affects our state, which affects our behaviour. And at the same time, our physiology can affect our state, which affects our behaviour. The one is, try being happy when you're hunched over like this, and try being sad when you're up like this. Our physiology actually has a massive impact. So some examples of how we can use this technology to upgrade organisational health, individuals' engagement, and really get more productivity. Simply breath. Like how many of us in the room are conscious of breathing prior to me saying this? You know, Alex, that's probably because of your dance background, right? You know, are we doing deep diaphragmatic breathing, or is it shallow breathing? Now, what I'm going to show you in a minute is this has a consequence here, but when we talk about the quantum world, this has a massive significance, and I'm going to go there in a little bit. So as you can see here, most people have got short little breaths. Maybe they're very tight breaths, they're not oxygenating their body, they're not getting the fullness of energy into their body, and therefore they're not performing in any way, shape they need to. But also it's not regulating their emotions. Some simple language examples. Cause and effect. Most of us in the room, most of the time, probably are at cause. You know, we take responsibility. That's how come we're in this room right now. That we are masters of our own destiny. We create what goes on for us, and that we are absolutely capable. Whereas there's a lot of people out there that blame everybody else and don't actually ever get shit done because they're all the time saying that they're effect of some external circumstance or they're effect of something else going on. And this is a correlation here. So the more at cause you are, the more likely you are to be able to get things happening. The more at effect you are of something else having power over you, the less likely you are to actually get anything done. In order to change behaviour, we have to accept that we are responsible for that behaviour. Very often we put that on somebody else and say that, oh, I'm mad because they did this. Well, no, you're mad because you're choosing as a response to the stimulus of them doing that. Another example, and particularly if you've ever done any digital transformation, the hierarchy ideas. The word digital transformation is a very difficult abstract term to actually pin down. And often when you sit in a big room such as this and you're having a conversation, whether it's the board or whether it's the management, and they're talking about different things, often they're so missing the mark because there's no common agreement in language. Now, the way that this would look is what's called chunking up or chunking down. Chunking up is, what purpose does this have? What's this an example of? What's this part of? And chunking down would be, what's this an example of? What's this a component of? What specifically? Who specifically? The movement of ideas. So for here, say we start at motorcycles, and I say, well, for what purpose? Chunking up, well, the motorcycle would get around. Or I could say, how specifically? And you go, well, I use a Harley. So it's to move you up and down. The reason being is that very often you might have two people fighting over the fact that one wants a Harley and one wants a Yamaha. When if you can get them to chunk up and both realise they're using motorcycles to get around, that has agreement, whereas that doesn't have agreement. So you chunk up to get agreement, and then you chunk back down to get specificity so it can actually be measured and delivered. So an example would be chunking up from a supermarket. So buildings is an example of a supermarket. Chunking up, well, buildings are part of a district. Chunking up, chain of supermarkets. Chunking up, ways people can buy food. So it chunks up. So for example, you go, well, I always go to Coles. Well, for what purpose? Well, so I can buy food. Well, couldn't you buy food somewhere else? Well, how about going to Woolies? Okay, well, and then you've just chunked them across, up, across, and then down. So it's a technology of getting agreement and a technology of bringing people together when there's disharmony.